Yeah. Well, so I think we're live. Um, how's it going, man?
It's going good. It's been a busy day for me.
Yeah.
It's spring break, so my kids are out, and it's not even like fun spring break where like your kids are old enough to go do something on their own. Like it's me, 7 year old, a 5 year old, a 6 month old, 7 month old. So it's been a long day. It's been a long week.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
what are you doing?
So yeah, I got new decorations up. I'm pretty stoked. Hopefully you guys can see them. Actually, my I can't tell which hand is over where. Okay, so if you can see this Quantum and Woody poster, my wife actually got me for that. Got me for that. Got that for me a couple weeks ago, and the frame actually fell apart after I put it up, so it wasn't up before, but it's pretty badass. And then we were recently at a store up in the Twin Cities, and she was looking through the posters, and we saw this a badass Bloodshot poster. And then today she surprised me with a new chair for my computer desk. So it's pretty
What?
badass all around.
Man, you're, you're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels, man. You're living it
I
up.
know it's going pretty well. But yeah, somebody I remember a while ago mentioned the fact that this is a Valiant show, and I had Batman stuff in the background because I have a lot of Batman stuff. But now I have some badass Valiant stuff, so people can shut their asses up.
Maybe what I need to do is there's a frame. My house is decorated by my wife. So, there's a lot of like artsy stuff here and there. So maybe what I need to do is I need to get one that I can just put in this frame back here. Like I have a couple posters, or something, so I can have a cool background.
Yeah, you got a couple cool things.
Yeah. But I mean, like when I had the room worked a lot better because I could have like the
Yeah.
hardcovers on display, or I could have like issues on the shelf. It was a nice kind of feeling to have that stuff set up, and now it's like I'm just in my kitchen now. I've been kicked out of like every room of the house. I have to clear dishes away and like a baby chair to like even do this.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. But I got something cool, and this is, I mean, I want to talk about this just for like a minute, just because I don't get too impressed with these kind of things. But for people who are watching or who watch later, I have the Punk Mambo ash can, and normally with the ash cans, I don't really care too much. They're not that big a deal. Sometimes, I mean, they're always in black and white, and uh, it's just not a great representation of like what you're gonna get. But the thing that's really neat about this one, and I really like this one, is that this one comes in a slipcase. So like if you see this, like it opens up. It's really cool. There's a lot of cool art. It talks about the different covers. It's got the coolest thing to me, just because this is like my kind of background. But there's this little yellow Valiant logo right here, and it's based on the Bad Brains logo of like the lightning bolt hitting the temple. It's so badass. I wish Valiant would do something with that and just make a shirt. Even if it was just for me, I don't even care. I'd buy like five of them. I like it so much. But then, just like as a record, the ash can slips right out of it.
That's crazy.
So this thing's rad. And I'm a big grump when it comes to all the like ash can stuff because I always tell people like, don't buy these things when they come out. They're never worth jack shit. But this one to me, like I've lost I don't know how many auctions on it already, and I was lucky enough with this one, I bid a pretty low amount and no one outbid me. So maybe they're just starting to become random, or maybe they're finally starting to like drop in price. You don't ever want to be that guy that pays $100 for one of these stupid things. But this one's awesome. I'm really glad I got it. And I mean, like they should do something like this with all of the ash cans. I think it makes them a little bit more special. It looks like there's a little more thought put into them. I know that the Fallen World one is not like this. It's just a regular ash can.
Sure.
But this one is like cream of the crop. I liked it a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's really fucking cool. I don't have that one or the Fallen World one, and I haven't read either of those yet either.
I know you're such a like dedicated fan who's not going to read anything until it's like the moment to talk
Not
about it.
everything, not everything, just
I
these
know,
things.
I know. I'm very excited though when you do get to read these. It'll be really fun to talk about both these books. Something that Eric always says on the podcast, for people who are listening, is Eric always says, it's a great time to be a Valiant fan. And I think with the books that Valiant has released to us early, and they've done a lot of it. They've really like stepped up this early in the year already. We've read almost everything, like the first issue of all these books already. Or Eric at least has them. He hasn't read them, but he's got copies. And you know, it's really exciting. It's a great time right now, I think, because even though I think we're finally getting into like the true post Dinesh era of Valiant. These do feel like these are the products and the projects that are not created, by the new. These are the ones that are created by the newer cast at Valiant, and they're exciting to look at. And they're exciting to read. It's a cool, different feel to everything. It's a little bit of a different voice, but hopefully, when we get a chance to talk about those products in the next like week or month or so, you guys feel the same. So yeah,
Yeah, I definitely agree that it feels like we're getting into that post Dinesh, the real, DMG era. And I think that we'll talk a little bit about this, but I think that Bloodshot Rising Spirit is one of the casualties of that changeover. Because I think that a lot of it, there was so much going on that making this book got lost in the shuffle. Pretty much everything else had it didn't have the things going wrong that this book has had. This book has had so many creative changes already, and I'm super stoked about the creative changes that are coming up. We talked last week about how those new Bloodshot solicits have Elliot Rahal's name on them, and I'm a big fan of his as a writer. And yeah,
as
so
am
that,
I.
yeah, so definitely stoked to see what he does. Rags Morales is coming onto the book with issue 6, as far as I remember, so that's going to be really fucking cool. But I will say, this book hasn't been very well received. I think I've liked it more than anybody, and I've not been super stoked on it myself. And yeah, it it's struggled, I don't think that it's had a very clear direction because of all the creative changes. It's one thing to have art changes on a book. It's another thing when you have writers changing, especially when you've got like a first issue and then you have, a whole bunch of extra stuff that's supposed to come after that that hasn't really been fleshed out yet. And you have other people trying to come in and do that work. Like that's not an easy thing, I don't think. So I don't know. I I do think that, it's had a lot of issues as a title, and that's part of why. But when we're seeing stuff like, Fallen World, possibly even Forgotten Queen, I think that it's a lot of these new books, Incursion, um, that have been really awesome. And I think they've been the ones that have been put together by the new crew, the new editorial staff and everything. I don't know. We can talk about the books. There really hasn't been a whole lot of other news or anything, has there?
No, the only thing I can really think of, and we can actually use this to lead into something, is Forgotten Queen writer Teeny Howard, who just barely started with Valiant, has already signed an exclusive contract with Marvel Comics. So if you're liking the book and you're like hoping that she's going to do more work, the possibility of that happening is probably not very good.
Well,
Um,
I think a lot of people were pointing out that generally when any creators sign an exclusive with Marvel or DC, it usually just means exclusive from the other one of those two. Because I
yeah,
know like Lemire had an exclusive with Marvel for a while, and he was still doing tons of Valiant stuff and creator own stuff. He just wasn't doing anything for DC.
yeah. I hadn't read anything yet that said like whether or not she was going to continue to do anything else or she was going to be able to.
Sure.
But and like I said, we could segue into our review of it. I just think if that's the case, it's kind of a bummer, because I do feel like the book reads like something a little bit different than we normally get, and I'm liking it. I don't love the book per se, but I think it's done really well, and I think there's some interesting stuff with it, at least with the first two issues. So if we don't get any more, it'll be kind of a shame, just because I think that those are books that are a little bit like they don't take a couple minutes just to skim through. Like I felt like when I read it, it took like 5-10 minutes to actually I got a chance to actually enjoy it. But I don't know, we'll see.
Well, I will say, I mean, yeah, we can definitely go into, just hop right into our review of Forgotten Queen number two. Um, and for anybody that's watching or listening, we will be talking spoilers. So if you haven't read the issue, definitely recommend that you do that. Um, all of the books that Valiant puts out are pretty good, so definitely worth reading. You know, everything that they do is pretty good, and a lot of the stuff they do is really fucking good. But anyway, Forgotten Queen 2, I feel like the first issue we got so much like there was a lot that happened in that first issue. And I felt that that was a really good, strong start to the story, and it wasn't like a ton of exposition. And then I feel like this issue kind of became exposition. And it wasn't poorly done exposition, but that's what it felt like. It felt like well handled, well crafted exposition and a little bit of, action and plot movement.
Yeah, I like this issue. I mean, again, it's not like the kind of book that's like blowing me away. It's not like the life and death of Toyo Harada, but I think this is actually a pretty enjoyable series where it's got a dense story to it. I like the glimpses back at her history,
Yeah.
and I thought like one thing that's really cool is yeah, this is a spoiler for those who haven't read it. We've already warned you, so you know what's going on at this point. But like, I love the Unity team that we
Yes,
see. Like, what
absolutely.
a great thing! Because when I was at Emerald City a couple weeks back, they were showing some slides from some upcoming issues of Forgotten Queen, and I was like, I was sitting kind of in the back, and my eyesight's not great, and I was like, that kind of looks like Galad. And they didn't talk about it. No one said anything about it. They just showed the pictures and just kind of moved on. But I was like, oh man, I'm really excited to read this next issue. Maybe he'll show up in there. Because I think one of the things gets that people complain about, like Britannia, because Britannia is that one book that's outside of everything else. Nobody knows how it ties in, and it's like, where are people? Where are Galad or Aram or these other characters? And we don't see them. So it's like I'm glad that like something from the universe pops into this. I mean, we obviously know that Warmonger exists within the Valiant universe, but being that she's immortal, it's just kind of neat to see like, well, the other immortals would be there, right? Or at least one of them. And where she's at, it just makes sense that Galad would make an appearance. Like that's a pretty big important era, and where she's at, he should be there.
Yeah.
Um, and then like so like I mean I didn't pick up on any of this in the first issue because I mean maybe like I think the way it was structured you wouldn't, or I'm not the most intelligent reader, and I will totally accept that. But it seems like that main scientist, there's something funny with her. Like maybe she's an immortal, or maybe she's got something going on where like there's something special about her. She knows a whole lot about uh, Vexana's armor, and she looks just exactly like the girl that like is there in the past with Vexana. So there's something about her. Either it's
Yeah,
her or like she's maybe like a weird descendant who just looks exactly like her. But it's got to be her, right? She's got to be like another immortal. You
yeah,
know. So
definitely.
I like the way the story's crafted. I really like it. It again, I mean, it's not a character that I'm really passionate about, but I think that's the thing that makes us cool. Like I said when we reviewed the first issue, I like a story about a character I don't necessarily like, and I feel like again, if they put Warmonger in a book in say like 2 years, whether it's a follow up to this in like a year, or if it's like, hey, we have this Galad book or we have this other book, and here comes Warmonger, I'm not gonna feel like, oh shit, her really. I mean, the jury's still out. This series hasn't wrapped, but like this series is pretty well done, and it still looks great, and
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, to me, like it's cool, man. It's cool to like something that you don't think you'll like, where you have to kind of eat a little bit of that humble pie. You're like, oh yeah, this is pretty good, huh? So I don't know. That's my thoughts on it.
My whole thing is like, yeah, nobody's a really big fan of Warmonger, right? But she's a character that doesn't have, as a character in her world, she has a ton of history. But in terms of the stories that have been written about her, she doesn't have much history. So yeah, I mean, none of us are like huge Warmonger fans, right? Especially
There
since
might
the
be one out there, man. I want to meet that person.
there might be one. And but there might be more after this series, and that's kind of what I was, what I was trying to get to is like, the reason I'm a big fan of Bloodshot is that, I've read these Bloodshot stories that have resonated with me, and I really like the character and how he's been handled in a couple of, at least a few of his iterations, and you know, that's drawn me into the character, and I've become invested in him. And now I view new stories that come out with him in them through that lens of already being invested in him. And now, there's no opportunity with her only having appearing in that one arc of Unity, especially one of the less well received arcs of Unity. She doesn't have that history with anybody. Like, none of us readers have that, like, oh yeah, she's a character that has really spoken to me in a few really important stories. No, like, we don't have that history with her. But the only way we ever get a chance to have that history with her is to let somebody tell some good stories with her. And that's a risk, because they could fall flat. Nobody could, might be that nobody cares. But I think that this is exactly what, the perfect opportunity for a company like Valiant, is taking risks on unknown characters, because for all intents and purposes, all of their characters are unknown. So really, I mean, you go talk to the average Marvel or DC or Image Comics fan, they're not going to know Warmonger any more or less than they know who Galad is. You start talking to them about Ivar Time Walker, they're going to have no idea what you're talking about. So I think that yeah, I think that's a great opportunity that Valiant has as, their niche in the comic publishing world. And I think they're taking advantage of it, and it's working. Like you said, the art in this book is really, really good. The writing, I think, is really solid. This issue wasn't my favorite, but I feel like, um, we needed to get the history and everything that we got from this issue. So it had to happen. Not every issue can be the most fat. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have those moments. And I think this issue did a good job of getting through them and conveying them well. Um, and I feel like the character has a voice now. Like, I didn't really feel like that before. So
Oh yeah,
I think there's a lot of good in this. And even if Teenie Howard doesn't continue writing the character, which I hope she does, but even if she doesn't, this is a great place for another writer to come in and, to take the character. I mean, however this ends, I'm sure it's not going to be with Warmonger dying.
yeah. And I do feel like after reading these first two issues, if they decide in a year that they're like, oh, we're going to do another a follow up series, whether it's with Tini or not, I probably would be excited about it. Just because I have enjoyed this as much as I have. So we'll see. Um, as far as my score on this book, I'm going to go with the 4 on it. I think it's a pretty solid book. Again, it's just not a character I'm super invested in, but at the same time, I think the story is really entertaining and good art, and just we'll just see what happens next time.
Yeah, I actually am going to give it the exact same score. I think this is a 4 out of 5 for me. I think the art is phenomenal. I think that's probably my favorite part about the book. But the writing is also really good. And the only reason I think that I don't like the writing more is just because it's not really my style of story. I think it's a great story. And I think that there are a lot of people who, if they give this book a chance, would really love it. It's just not exactly my kind of book. So that's the only
Yeah,
reason I wouldn't score the writing higher, but it is really good. I definitely would recommend it to a lot of people. I think that this is worth reading, and I think in an ideal world, even if this is this 4 issue mini, in an ideal world, I'd love to see this continue. Like one mini a year or something like that. We've gotten a few Britannia, we got Divinity kind of in that chopped up way. I'd love to see more Forgotten Queen like that.
yeah, I totally agree.
So I was already talking a little bit about, my feelings on Bloodshot Rising Spirit. I think that it has suffered because of the creative team changes. And, I know a lot of people have kind of been, well, maybe not a lot, but I've seen some people bashing on the art in this issue. And I definitely understand that I feel like we get spoiled a lot as Valiant fans in terms of art when we get people like Kafu and Juan Jose Reap and Luis LaRosa and Miko Suyan and whoever else. Like, I mean, we've got so many amazing, amazing artists that we get to see. Ryan Bodenheim is one that jumps to mind. We were just talking about the art in Forgotten Queen. There's so many that there's no way we can name them all. But so, yeah, I mean, sometimes we get these issues where, especially when this book has had a bit of trouble and a ton of changes, unfortunately, they're probably going to have to just get an artist who can knock out the pages on a deadline and put the issue out. Um, I think that Valiant does a pretty good job most of the time of not putting out any filler, but we're at a spot with this book where it's kind of filler right now, and I hope that it gets better before it ends. But I think that that's essentially where we're at, and this is filler art.
I totally agree. So the art on this is John K. Snyder the third. I'm not familiar with his art, and I think the thing that you said at the beginning of this when you were talking about the book is right on the money. We do get a little spoiled with like good art, and I think that's one of the things that when Valiant relaunched in 2012 was really nice about all the books. Even though we don't get a lot of books, for the most part, everything looks pretty good. Okay. And I mean, here and there, you might get a book where it's like, oh, the art was a little flat. This is a book I just think the art is so unappealing. And I mean, hey, I'm not trying to bash the guy. Like I said, I've never heard of him. I don't know what his history in comics is like. I don't know how hard he works. I don't know any of that stuff. I'm just saying, like for this book, it just does not work for me. It just looks a little rough. And maybe like his raw pencils look a little bit better before they're inked. I don't know, but I didn't like how this book looked. I don't even. I mean, and even story wise, I mean, I don't think the story was great, but there were things I actually did like about this. And I've brought it up before in previous episodes where with a book like Bloodshot Rising Spirit, it's a chance to tell the history of Bloodshot. And there's things that I have questions about, like what was it like when he would capture like the Gen Zero kids, for instance, things like that, or other little psyops. He's the psyop killer. When do we get to this psyop killer part? Like what about all these other like first experiences that he had with like either famous people in the Valiant universe or just moments that we've heard about. So like in this issue, like it's the first time he goes up against the hardcore. We won't really count the previous issue. It was just like the last couple pages. This whole issue pretty much is that. Um, there were little things I did like about this. Like I do like the fact that he goes up against the hardcore. You know, I like. It's kind of weird. I do kind of like how the nanites still show like a weird like personality with Bloodshot. So he's through whatever programming that's going on with him, he still thinks that there's someone there talking to him.
Yeah, this
Because
is this is a
we've
callback
seen
to
that
what it was
before.
like in 2012. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that did stand out to me where I was like, I like that, and I wish we saw it a little bit more because we don't see this, okay? But like, we know that Bloodshot is like kind of like an unstoppable killing machine. The nanites will replenish his body. But the thing that kind of gets lost, I think, in the shuffle of like who he is, besides the guy who can soak up damage and dish it out, is he's like a living computer of sorts. So I love the fact that in one moment he did hack like the hardcore thing and gain like the power of flight. Like he's like, Lifeline, give me flight. And they're just like, wait, that's my voice. Like I think little things like that we have kind of gone away from with the character. Like we don't deal with much of like the like how much of a living computer he is. Instead, it's just like how much of a like living killing machine he is. But I mean, those moments have been kind of few and far between with this title as it is. And I mean, I don't think this is still. I still don't think it was a great issue, but this was an okay issue. I mean, I did have fun kind of reading it. It just wasn't. It just wasn't really appealing to look at. And even right now, looking at it, on my iPad, I'm just like, I'm not really. I don't think it looks great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm in love with the art, but I do think that it is good. I think that it's still like there are a few pages in it that feel a little more rushed than others, but I think overall it's still well done art, even if you don't really like the style. And I do think the style is kind of cool. It's a little bit on the cartoony side, but it still feels like good action art. It's really kinetic. It moves really well, you know. I think that it I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. And you know, I think that in terms of this being a badass action book, that box is checked. This is definitely a badass action book. Now, what it doesn't have is, you know, the exact same thing that like Lemire was able to bring to the character with Bloodshot Reborn, especially, and even, you know, to a lesser degree with Salvation. Um, you know, it doesn't have that kind of depth, but and it doesn't, you know, I mean, the Straczynski stuff, I think, also has a little bit more of that as well. Um, but this is still a badass action book. It's not my favorite thing right now, but it's still a Bloodshot book. It's still badass. And it's still something that, you know, could be a quick, fun read for somebody who wants to get to know the character a little bit. Wouldn't necessarily say that this is the best first thing to read or, you know, what I would want to tell someone to base their opinion of the character on. But I do think that it's still a good representation of who he is as a character.
In a way, it kind of reminded me. This story has reminded me a little bit of like old Valiant, like from like the '90s and like some of the like later stuff in the run. Um, yeah, to me, it's just like it's okay. You know, like I don't hate it, but like I do kind of wonder like I'm trying to think how to like phrase this, but like I really want to know like what the entire deal is with like the creative teams on this book because I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that we don't hear about. Like obviously we know that like uh Lonnie Madler and Zach Thompson, they were gonna write the book, and then we got Kevin Greenville on it, and then we've just gotten like weird art teams, and it just seems like man, this thing is like not the thing that I think. I don't think Valiant knew it would go this way for them. You know, I think they've done like a decent job of like salvaging maybe what turned out to be a bad situation for them. And the one thing I do hope with this, you know, I've mentioned before in other episodes when we've talked about Rags Morales, I like his art a lot. And I'd love to see how someone that works with Valiant Colors is work because Valiant has great colors. I think that these next couple issues, if they're not great, which I don't know. I mean, I think Elliot Rahal. I don't know if he's writing the next issue, but when he does come on for at least the last two, I'll probably enjoy him. You know, just because I have liked his writing in the past. Not everything he's done, but I've liked most everything he's done. So I'm hoping that this title at least like ends on like a bang. You know, because it hasn't been that much of a bang for me reading it 5 issues in. So I don't know. I'm really hoping that like these last couple issues are really good.
Yeah, I'll give this one a 3.25. I want to go higher because I love Bloodshot, but I can't.
Oh man, so I'm at a three. You know, I feel like that's as good as I could do. One thing that was kind of cool about all this stuff, though, to me is I've been trying to do, and I will admit I've done a poor job of doing this. But on the weeks where we've had multiple books, I've tried to do polls either through our Facebook page or our Twitter page, just seeing like what books people are the most excited for. And I'd say like we got 14 votes, I want to say, on our Facebook page of people that chose to like vote on it. And five people were like, hey, Bloodshot's the book I'm the most excited for. You know, maybe it's because it's the Forgotten Queen, it's the warmonger, no one cares about her, you know, but the Twitter page was about the same too. So it ended up being around probably about 70% between both pages were more excited for the Forgotten Queen over Bloodshot. But even though like we've talked about how like a lot of people probably don't like Bloodshot, like the run right now, it's still there's still people out there who are like, this is the book I'm most excited for. So there is that. I mean, like it's not like a totally lost cause. You know, there are people that still like it. I haven't checked sales on any of these things. I used to keep up on all that kind of stuff, but I haven't lately. I just kind of don't have time. But I'd be curious to see where it's selling at, just because Bloodshot has been like a decent seller, even though Valiant doesn't sell a lot overall. But I'd be curious to see what this is at, just because it has had such a negative voice from the fandom when it comes to this title.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure that the sales on it aren't great. They're probably just gonna push through to issue 8 so that they can have a couple of trades and call her done. And then we're getting a new Bloodshot series later.
Yeah, and it looks great. You know, like the preview art I've seen looks pretty awesome. I think I've seen like 4 pages total.
Yeah. The new stuff looks like it's gonna be really, really, really badass.
Yeah, and if anybody is interested, I don't know if they are. I would hope so. I did interview Tim Seeley, who's going to be the upcoming writer for Bloodshot.
Yeah.
If you go to our Facebook page or if you go to our Twitter feed, it should be right there an interview with Tim Seeley, and it sounds pretty fun, man. It sounds like it's gonna be a wild ride when he gets on the book. And I think Free Comic Book Day is coming up in like a little more than a month, so that's when we'll see the start of it because he's writing that Bloodshot book or the Bloodshot story within it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for the Free Comic Book Day issue. I think there's going to be some Bloodshot stuff and a couple other things. Um, so yeah, that's going to be pretty sweet. Um, so next week we're actually only getting a couple of $1 debuts. We're getting Divinity and Exo Manowar. I'm kind of curious which Exo Manowar they're doing the dollar debut of, but
I'm pretty sure it's Kins.
that would make sense.
I
But
think it
that's all we're
is.
getting next
I
week. We're
know.
not
I know
actually
it's
getting.
solicited. I know they had solicited it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I never saw that. Or I don't remember seeing that. But yeah, so that'll be the first week of April for Valiant. It's just a couple of dollar debuts. And I like that they do the dollar debuts. They are a company that not a lot of people know of. And I think that those dollar debuts are a really good opportunity for people to kind of get a taste of what Valiant has to offer as a comic company. And both of those are Kent books. Personally, I like Divinity more than his run on Exo Manowar, but they are both good and definitely both things that could draw people into the Valiant universe.
Yeah, I like the way that Valiant does it because for me, it's the same way that Image Comics does it too, where they'll just take the titles that they're doing or that they've done in the past, and they're like, okay, here's our like $1 introductory of the series. You know, like you can get like the first issue of Invincible or Walking Dead or things like that. So I'm glad that Valiant's still trying to sell their previous material. They're not letting people forget about it. You know, the past should never be forgotten. So the one thing I just hope that one day we get, and probably a question for like Peter Stern at Valiant, which I don't see that dude around anywhere. But I'd love to see Valiant do something with like the old '90s books and like do like some $1 debuts of like the original Exo Man of War or like Shadow Man or Harbinger. I think that'd be cool, you know, just because I do like the old material still, and I don't want to see that stuff forgotten. And it sucks when we only get like an omnibus once a year, and that's the only like effort Valiant puts into the past. That's just my little rant. Not a big deal. Not going to make me hate anything if we don't get it when we're not getting it anyway. But it would just be a cool thing. Please, someone from Valiant hear that and do it. So,
Yeah. Eh, we're getting Bloodshot. That's all that really matters.
oh goddamn.
No, I'm sure if they did like the whole Unity saga or whatever.
But I don't think that's going to happen now because I mean I know when Dinesh was working at Valiant and him and Warren they had worked out a deal where they were going to do Unity, but I don't think that's going to happen now. You know, it just sucks. Like I always just wish like that would be the thing that Valiant would do. Just I don't. I mean, like I know that there's a period of those books where you can get them in like discount bins. Like there's a good couple years of Valiant that was like cheap. The numbers are so high, you know. But I'd love to see Valiant do something that's not just like here's an omnibus. Like give us like a year's worth in a trade paperback, you know, just something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just mostly am concerned about the comics coming out next week are going to be good or next month. You know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah,
make sure that the comics we're getting for the rest of the year are going to be good. And give me a really badass bloodshot movie, and and then let's keep chugging from there.
Well, hopefully that happens.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so I mean, a couple of books, not necessarily like the strongest books, but I do think Forgotten Queen is a good book, and I do think that there's a good chance that we're going to see a strong ending for this Bloodshot book, even if people haven't been absolutely loving it up to now. So yeah, I mean, still stuff to look forward to. Dollar debuts next week, and then as we get into next month, where we got some really badass stuff coming out. I
Yeah.
believe Punk
Yeah.
Mambo launches in April, so that'll be badass.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thanks to everybody for hanging out with us and watching and listening. And we will see you guys. I don't know if we'll end up having an episode next week, maybe if some big news drops, but with only dollar debuts to talk about, we'll probably wait until there are actually some books. Um, but yeah, so we'll see all of you guys very soon. Signing off, I'm Eric Baumgart.
And I'm Josh Rathman.
And I hope that you all stay super valiant and keep that spirit risen. I don't know.
Lifeline, give me flight.